doing? This is Derek Sire and Jim Schaefer here with L3 Leadership Podcast. We are so excited to be with you all again. I believe this is episode number 5.
Number cinco.
Number 5. Man, when I tell you I think about this podcast, like I think about us and this thing that we've developed when we're not together.
Yes.
Is that normal?
Yes.
Can I say I have a concept crush?
Concept crush.
A concept crush. I think about this when we're not together. I think about learning, loving, and leading and how that impacts my life and my family and my friendship and my business and my personal, professional relationships. I can think about the L3 concepts, the L3 podcast, the L3 video, the L3 content, everything that we want to offer our listeners and our viewers, you all. I think about it when we're not together.
That means it's working.
I hope so.
That means it's working.
I want people to think
really
about us when they're not with us. Maybe we could have like viewership spouses.
Oh.
Did we just make it weird?
Viewer spouse. I think they just got weird.
Yeah, I think it just got weird. Okay, we
That's
don't
okay
want
with
you
that.
guys to marry our podcast.
Don't think of us that way.
Not that way, but when you're not actually listening to us, we want you to be thinking about some of the things that we're saying. We think this stuff is valuable. We think that it's useful. You can take anything that we say, almost everything that we say, and apply it immediately to your situation.
You know what I want most of all, though?
Most of all.
When people are not just thinking about us, but interacting with us.
I agree.
Shoot us an email. Shoot us.
That'd be great.
Send us a comment.
Yes.
You know, something that we can interact with our listeners and our viewers. We get to say viewers now because I'm looking at a camera.
This is new too.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're stretching ourselves. You all stretching yourselves. This is going to be great. I think the viewing is going to add a different element to our podcast because they get to actually see us. And we don't manufacture this. This isn't fake. We actually love the stuff that we're talking about.
It's a lot of fun.
This is really fun. I agree.
My curtain in the background, though, is probably not very well placed. It's a little crooked.
It's a little crooked. We're not going to blame that on you. We're going to blame that on Sharon.
We're not going to blame Sharon.
We're not going to blame Sharon.
No.
That would be so easy because she's
See,
not
that's
here.
the one thing, though, for a leader. You always take more than your share of the blame.
There you go.
And you
maybe also
give,
as a husband.
And you give more than your share of the credit.
Okay, say that one more time for me.
So you take more than your share of the blame.
Right.
And you give more than your share of the credit.
Take the blame, share the credit.
Yes.
I can get down with that.
People will follow you to the ends of the earth if you do that for them.
I love that. Let me take some of that load and give you guys some cake.
That's right.
I like that.
That's right.
Can it be a bumper sticker?
It will be now.
It will be now. I know. If we don't make it, somebody will.
That's right.
All right. So this is our one of our very first test visual podcasts, and so we're just gonna go with the flow here. How do you think about that?
Go with the flow. I like the flow.
All right,
let's.
I'm gonna bring this up. I'm just bringing this out of my pocket. I'm bringing this out of my head. I brought this up my sleeve today, and I didn't tell you I had it up my sleeve.
Oh, see, like when I threw the podcast at you that
you
one
threw
day
that
at
at me. I
Vintage
was
Coffee.
like, "Whoa, what?"
I still have that microphone.
Really?
Yeah.
That's great.
It will forever be our first microphone.
Forever.
It's the only time we used it, but it will be forever.
We've upgraded. All right, here we go. So,
unsleeve me.
In any organization, you have people who mess up, right?
Yes,
Wherever there's
absolutely.
people, there's going to be flaws.
Yeah, people are flawed.
People are flawed. We are flawed. I'm flawed.
I'm flawed. I'm definitely flawed.
And I think
I'm glad you didn't respond to that.
I did not. I was going to be like, you are flawed, Jim. But in any organization, there are flawed people. That's true. There are flawed people. And I think the hope is that we're able to either help them become less flawed or overcome those flaws or make those flaws better. Maybe their weaknesses make them their strengths. But what happens...
That's a different topic. Remind me, and we'll talk about making weaknesses strengths.
Making weaknesses strength. We're going to put a pin in that, come back to it. But what happens when the person will not get better? They will not improve. Now, I'm going to let you answer, but I want to frame this question a little bit using football.
Okay.
Now, we are both OU fans. You probably greater than I.
I have it tattooed on my ankle.
That's impressive.
Right.
We have a defensive coordinator in Mike Stoops.
Is that what we're calling him now?
We're calling him defensive coordinator. And he keeps making mistakes, and we are 9 games in. We're currently in our 10th game. And the fans are not seeing an improvement.
There's not. You're right. There's not.
Would you agree?
I would agree there is not.
There's not improvement. So, as a CEO, as a supervisor, and as a manager, you really believe in someone, but you're not seeing improvement. You give them chance after chance. What is your next step?
Well, that's a really great question, and it's one that is not easy to answer because the answer is not. The answer hurts somebody.
That's true.
The answer hurts somebody. There comes a point when an employee, if they're not taking care of business, if they're not taking their job seriously, if they're not improving like you expect them to be improving, then at some point you have to share that employee with your competitors.
Wow. And that is a very polite way to say
Fired.
you fired them. Yes.
Yeah.
Gotta let them go.
Yeah. You've got to let them go. You give them due diligence. You practice
Right.
due diligence. You give them all the chances. You help to build them. You lift them up. You give them all the tools that they need as a leader. You give them all the tools that they need, and that employee will decide whether or not they actually want to accomplish this. And at some point, you say, you know what? I need more from you. I
Right.
need more from this position. You are not giving me what I need in order to accomplish our goals
Right.
here, so I'm going to need to replace you.
And so I want to point out two things that you said that I think are really important, and I think you all picked up on this as well. He said give them opportunity and
Absolutely.
give them resources. So when you're trying to develop a person, an employee, a coworker, when you're trying to develop, you want to make sure you give them opportunity and give them resources. I don't think there is a timeline necessarily that applies to that, but by the time you talk to them, that first conversation shouldn't be you're fired.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not, because you have not given that person a chance.
Right.
It's just like you have a lot of people that'll complain about the reviews
Right.
at work. You know, they go into review expecting surprises. Well, I had no idea I was doing this or that wrong. You never told me that I was doing that, or you never told me I needed to accomplish this. Right? So how come you're waiting until February to tell me something that I did wrong last March
Right.
and continue to do wrong throughout the year when you could have told me that I was doing something wrong and I could have corrected it? I would have corrected it. Now I'm not going to get as big a bonus. I'm not going to get as big a raise. I may even lose my job
Right.
because you did not communicate with me. You have to give your employees a chance. If you don't, other employees will see and they won't trust you.
That's the bigger
And
picture.
if
right
you
there.
don't have trust, you don't have followers, and you are not a leader.
So would you say that in opportunity, wrapped in opportunity, expectations are in there as well?
Clear expectations,
Clear
absolutely.
expectations.
Yeah,
So as a supervisor, as a manager, saying, this is what I expect of you. These are our goals. This is our culture. This is what our expectations are of you. And within that expectation, within opportunity, expectation is wrapped in there.
yes, absolutely. If you don't have clear expectations, you don't have clear goals. You have not set a clear, what's the one I'm trying to think of? You've not set a clear line of progression for the employee to do
Right.
better. You know, otherwise you're just saying, "Hey, I need you to do better." Okay, great. What's better? Well,
What's
you'll
better?
know it. No, that's not the way that works.
Right.
You need to define it. You need to define that and let them know what it is you need them to be better at.
Right.
Because they may, you know, Mike Stoops at OU may be very, very good against the run and not be very good in the secondary. Well, okay, Mike, you're doing a great job against the run. I need a little help in the secondary.
Oh, yeah.
We're getting torched by OSU. We're getting torched
Everybody.
by Iowa State.
Everybody.
Iowa State had a third string quarterback who, by the way, was actually a linebacker
Wow.
and beat us. Right?
Amazing.
So I need help in the secondary. I need you to keep where you are
Right.
with your running game because
Right.
you're doing that great. And I need you to get your secondary beefed up. Your guys need to be closer to the receivers. They need to be, you know, a little bit, you know, less bump and run and more bump and bump. I don't know, be more physical, be more aggressive, whatnot. But at the same time, when you're giving this feedback,
Right.
you want to start it on a positive note and you want to leave it on a positive note.
So if I had to categorize this type of interaction, this person being given chance after chance, the opportunity, the expectations, I think this would fit, if we're sticking to our L3
Mm-hmm.
theme, this would fit under learn and love,
Absolutely.
right? We're
And
of course-
lead. I mean, really, because it's lead as well, because you're putting your leader hat on 1st,
Mm-hmm.
and you're using love to help your employee learn.
I agree. If we had to stack it, though,
Yes.
if we had to stack it, I'm saying we have our leader hat on.
Yes, already. Okay.
We already got our leader hat on, but now we're emphasizing on learning and loving. And not only am I learning you, am I learning as a supervisor, as a manager, not only am I learning the employee, not only am I learning my coworker, but I'm helping love as well. Because without the love, the learning and the leading, it almost feels kind of coarse, kind of like it cuts. Like it's very
It'd be
direct.
very cold.
Yeah, it'd be very cold.
Very cold.
I come in, I walk into the room, I say, this is where you're failing. We talked about this initially, right? And I, the leader, need to make sure that I make this decision. Now, where the love comes in is that now I'm thinking about you as a person, right? I've considered
Absolutely.
you as a coworker, right, as an employee, but now I'm considering you as a person. And
Right.
so now when you have the leader hat on, and then you put your love hat on, and then you're putting your learn hat on, or you can put the learn and love hat on. It definitely impacts or determines. You filter through how you interact with someone based on learning and loving. I completely agree with that.
Yep.
And so now when I sit down with you and I say, all right, Jen, we've talked about this. Expectations have been made clear, and you have not.
I need at least 2 hours a week, my friend. I'm not getting 2 hours a week.
At least, right? At least. We're not meeting that, right? This is where I believe you begin to have that conversation of, now that you're not meeting my expectations, you've had the opportunity, right? I've given you the resources. What are those next steps?
Yep. So the other thing you need to look at too is if the person you're speaking to, there's another level potentially to that. So you have to take a lot of things into consideration.
Okay.
Some of it is just plain and simple performance, right? Is that person doing what they're supposed to be doing?
Right.
If that person has employees or direct reports of their own, so using Mike Stoops as an example,
Okay.
he is not the one out there on the field,
It's true.
right? He is the one giving the coaching during the week and giving direction during the game.
Right.
It is up to his employees or his players to perform.
That's true.
And sometimes you don't have the right person at that level in
Right.
place. And so you talk to the leader and you ask them, you have to analyze the problem. First thing is you tell Mike Stoops, I need better pass defense.
Right. You're great at the run.
400 yards a game is not acceptable for a pass defense.
I agree.
That is called torched.
Yes. Flamed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Burnt.
So you have to look at it and you say, okay, so you're not giving me what I need here. What is your explanation for not giving the team what the team needs?
That's a great question.
And you allow them to, it starts out as a conversation, right? So as you said, you're putting the person first.
Right.
You put the person first, everything else is easier to swallow.
Yeah.
Because at that point you say, I really don't want to go down this road because you go from making a whole lot of money to making no money.
Right.
With whatever contracts or whatever in place aside. But you're messing with somebody's livelihood, so there's a whole lot of love you really need to put in at the very, very forefront.
I agree.
You have to
Before
start
the
out
conversation.
right.
Yes, I agree.
Right.
This is where the investment in relationship, the investment in people come in.
Exactly.
So by the time you have this conversation, it's receivable.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah, because if you don't, he's going to walk in, he's going to say, okay, well, this is, I know you're just going to yell at me. I know you hate the way our defense works. I've heard it all before, and I'm just going to sit here and wait till you're done, and I'm going to go home, and I'm going to eat my steak dinner, and I'm going to be done.
Right.
Right? And nothing's going to change.
That's horrible.
Yeah. So you don't want that.
Right.
So you build up hopefully at this point you have a relationship. Now you may be a new leader. Lincoln Riley is a fairly new leader, although he's been around for a while, but he's not been the head man except since June, July.
Recently, yes.
Yeah, something like that. So you have to consider it and say, well, obviously in the football world, things happen very quickly. It can go from bad to worse. It can go from bad to great. You know, in a game, it can switch. In the middle of a game, it can
Right.
switch. You put the person first. You talk to him. You say, "Okay, what is your thoughts on how to make this better?" And he says, "Well, you know, this year I've got a cornerback that is not performing up to speed, and nobody else is really ready to take his place. We kind of have what we have." In the corporate world, in the business world, you would say, "Well, I have an employee who is not very good with Excel, and so his reports are always late because he can't do it very fast, or he has to get help."
That's a real
right?
example.
And so you give that employee a chance. You allow the leader to give that employee a chance and say, "You have a choice to make here. You know, you're really great at Word, you're really great at PowerPoint, I think you're great with people, but you need to work on your Excel.
Right.
How can I help you to be better at Excel?"
I think that's good.
Training, you know, physical training may not be an option. Maybe it is you buy them a book. Maybe it is they go home on their own and you tell them, you know, "I need you to get better. If you don't get better, we're going to have a different conversation."
Conversation next time is going to be different.
Right. And it may not be so pleasant.
Right.
Of course, you still keep your love in that.
Of course.
You have that hard conversation, even if it ends in termination of the employee.
Right.
Or literally my favorite is sharing that employee with a competitor. Right.
Right.
So
We're
I
gonna release you for other
Ken,
opportunities.
I think one of Ken Blanchard's books is where I read that.
Yeah.
But they don't ever fire people. They tell them, "I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to share your experience or your expertise with our competitors."
So this is why I believe that leadership is so complex.
It is very
There's
complex, yeah.
levels to leadership. I think this is a perfect example for multi-level leadership. If we had to throw a term or we had to wrap it in a phrase, I think multi-level leadership is what we're talking about today. We're talking about not just one simple solution for a very thick problem, a very deep problem. We're talking about ways to address these levels of leadership. And that's a perfect example. If we're having an issue with our defense is the problem, I go to the head defensive coach. And the defensive coach tells me what the problem is, and we do the best to give him opportunity, to set expectations, to provide those resources so that he and his employees can be successful. And that makes him a better leader. It makes me a better leader. It makes our levels of leadership grow and they expand, and the girth of that leadership level becomes deep and it becomes more solid. And this is why these levels of leadership are so important to understand. You said something very important earlier. You said as long as we have people, there's going to be mess ups.
Absolutely.
People mess up. And I think when we go into those situations, understanding that and having a gracious heart and extending the grace and the mercy that we also once received or we want to receive, we see people as people. We learn to love them. We learn to learn them.
Right.
I think that helps us lead the best.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's a really good point. And that you have to, as a leader, your goal is to, well, your sole purpose really is to support the people that are under your charge.
I agree.
And part of that is really getting to know them on a personal level. Now, you don't necessarily want to end up at their house for dinner twice a week.
Right. Not always.
You don't need to hear all their deepest, darkest secrets, but you need to be able to connect to them on a personal level. How are your kids? How is your wife? Where did you go for vacation last year? Where are you going this year? You know, what did you do this weekend? Do you go to church? Do you have a small group? What is your favorite football team? Oh, it's the orange team. I'm sorry. You know, give a little rib every now. Yeah. Pew pew.
Flavin' wheat.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or eating steak out of Longhorn steak for dinner is always an option.
It's always an option.
But if you learn your people and don't just walk in, "Hi, Steve. Glad you're here today.
Yeah.
Great job, Steve. You're doing wonderful. Steve, you need to pick up the pace. Thanks, Steve. Have a great day."
Wow.
If that's your interaction with your employees, guess who's not coming to work very much?
Or
Your employee. Yeah.
Or if I come, I'm not happy to be here.
Well, and you will find you will have no sick days because you will use it all up. You'll have
Right.
no vacation days because
You're
you
gonna
use it all up. And half the time when you're at work, you're going to be looking for jobs and or doing nothing.
And you don't get the best of me. You get the leftovers of me.
Right.
I'm not giving you the best. You don't deserve the best. You don't treat me like the best. You don't deserve the best. And I think oftentimes you hear, and I've heard this before, and help me out. Maybe you all can help me back. Send me some feedback on social media. What do you do when you hear people that say, just show up and do your job? I don't have to learn you. I don't have to love you. We don't have to have a relationship. I show up, do my job. You show up, do your job. What do you feel about that, Jim? How do you address that?
I quit.
I quit. Yeah.
I mean, you can do that for a while if you're on a temp job, and if you're working in a warehouse, or even if you're doing, white collar work with accounting or
Right.
whatever it is you're doing, you're going to get that.
Yeah.
A lot. I've done a lot of consulting and contracting in my day as a project manager by trade, and you get a lot of that because you're part of the team, but you're not really part of the team.
Right. Your contract.
And the ones who tell you, "Oh, well, I just treat you as one of the team." Well, no, you don't. You really don't.
Right.
I'm sorry. There were 7 meetings in the last 2 weeks that were company wide that I was not invited to. And you talk to your guys like you guys are best buds, but you don't ever stop by my office to see how my wife is,
Wow.
or how my newborn
Right.
is, or what vacations I've had lately, or how your family is, that sort of thing. You're keeping that type of information to yourself and for your other employees. You're not giving that to your contractors.
Right.
Contracting is hard. You have to have almost a steel heart yourself
Gosh.
to do that. But that's one thing that I fail at because I don't have a steel heart.
And that's
for
good.
me, I have always been the servant leader for my teams. I'm the guy literally who will bring you coffee.
Wow.
If you're busy and you need something to drink, do you need coffee? I will bring you coffee. I had a boss who would always leave his coffee. He would get coffee and then put it in the microwave because it wasn't ever hot enough, and he'd forget it. I'd come by 30 minutes later and the microwave still be beeping. Beep, beep, beep. Yep. So I would hit 30 seconds, 45 seconds. I would heat it up and take it to him, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I still didn't like him, but that's a different conversation.
But you still brought him coffee,
I still brought him coffee.
which speaks
That's
a lot
just-
by itself.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you for not having a still heart, too.
Yes.
I think that's very important. I think sometimes we get in these environments and we come in with this palpable heart, with this soft heart, this open and willing, and the environment makes us hard. It
Yes.
makes us cold. It makes us
does.
hard, is what I meant to say. It makes us cold. It makes us stony. It makes us this very coarse person that we know we're not.
Right.
And we come in, and it's almost like we have to put on this air, this attitude, in order to survive in this atmosphere. Because if we come in as who we truly are, then our feelings are going to get hurt. And I know you all have experienced that. You are your true self in one environment, and when you step in another environment, you feel like you have to be somebody else in order to survive in that environment. My challenge to you, to us, is to find an environment where you can be yourself. That way you thrive at work and you thrive at home.
Right.
And we know they both impact each other. There have been times when I hated my job and I came home, and I'm a grumpy guy. I don't like being a grumpy guy. And there are times when things haven't been the greatest at home, and I go to work and I'm a grumpy guy. They infect. I was going to say effect, but they infect each other, right?
They do, absolutely.
And you have to find a place that allows you to succeed and thrive, that where you learn to love what you do, why you do it, how you do it, the people around you, the people you work with, and you grow as a leader. I keep trying. We're going to keep throwing this learn, love, and lead as much as we can, because we believe it infects, that it is a part of every area of our life, and I believe that to the core.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one thing I would challenge you even further, you said, find a place where you can be yourself. I would challenge you to be yourself anyway.
Anyway,
Because if you're not, you will be absolutely miserable.
That's a next
trying
step
to
challenge.
trying to be somebody that you're not, or something that you're not.
Right.
If you don't understand something, or you don't like the way things are, well, that's fine. But don't let those things change you to something that you are not.
That's
because practice makes permanent, right? It doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. And if you're at the job all day long pretending to be somebody that you're not, you are practicing to be that person.
please say that one more time. You spend all day long.
Pretending to be somebody that you're not, you are practicing to be that person.
Oh my gosh. I would take that to the next step and say that you're going to start being that person more permanently.
Yes. Because practice makes permanent.
See, that's great. That's awesome. Learn, loving, leading. I think that's great. Sorry about that, Mike Stoops. If you hear this, Like we still love you. We're 8-1 right now. I don't know what the score to the game is, but we just had to throw you under the bus for a little bit. We'll do some CPR on you. If I see you in the street, I'll shake your hand and take a picture with you. But right now, our secondary sucks.
Asking for $100.
So you want to buy my steak for me? I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's good. I think people are in that place. Like, what happens when you show up to work every single day and you're working with people that are not getting better, right? What are those steps we talked about? Here, I think if we could recap it as we wrap up the show, I think our initial question was, what happens when you have a coworker, when you have a subordinate, when you have a direct report, and they're not performing up to expectations, right?
Right.
We said, well, first of all,
You define the expectations.
We have to define expectations.
Right.
And the expectations, when we define those, they're wrapped in opportunity. And so we have to give them an opportunity to explain themselves, to understand the expectations, to meet those expectations. And then the second thing we talked about is making sure we're giving them the resources to make sure they can meet those expectations. So opportunity, expectations, and then the resources in order to do their job well.
Yes,
Did I cover that all?
you did.
Final thoughts, Jim. What are some final thoughts for our viewers out there?
Well,
our
one thing to
listeners?
remember, like we said, is remember that you are working with humans, and we are imperfect. We are imperfect beings. There's only one perfect being in the world,
Uh-oh, that's a whole nother one.
right? There was one perfect being in this world,
Yes, sir.
and the rest of us don't qualify.
I agree.
Now, we aim for perfection. Maybe we hit excellence, right? But when you remember that and you treat somebody like they are human,
Right.
because humans have feelings, humans have needs, humans have fear. They're going to be afraid of you when you call them into their office,
Right.
because chances are they know they're not meeting expectations.
Exactly.
Right. And you define those expectations. You give them something that they do well. You work on what they need to work on. Give them those expectations, and you leave them with something else that they do well. Sometimes you have to stretch a little bit, but even if you have to stretch, you've got to do that.
I agree.
And then at the end of the day, they will make the decision what they're going to perform.
Put the ball in their court. Give them everything they need in order to succeed, which is opportunity and resources, and see what happens.
Yep, that's it.
This is Derek Sire and Jim Schaefer with the L3 Leadership Podcast, where we are discussing how to learn, love, and lead. Thank you all for being with us here for another episode. We'll see you next time.
Next time.
You've been listening to the L3 Podcast with Jim and Derek. Be sure to check out our other episodes on theleadershipcoaches.net/podcast.